Usually, when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of total precision.
Right, like engineering almost.
Exactly.
Right,
Like
yeah.
you break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points at it and says, there it is.
The visual evidence is just undeniable. It's either broken or it's not broken.
Yeah.
And well, I mean, that's a comforting binary for us.
Hmm.
Because as humans, we are just deeply wired to prefer things that can be categorized.
Right.
Things that can be isolated and actually seen.
But then you step into a field like, say, neurodevelopment or complex trauma.
Oh yeah, that's a whole different ballgame.
Right, and suddenly that x-ray machine is entirely useless. I mean, the bones are fine, but the system itself is misfiring.
Right.
And we find ourselves looking at this diagnostic landscape that is just incredibly murky, subjective, and sometimes frustratingly abstract.
Yeah, you're forced to navigate the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters. The symptoms are super clear, but the underlying mechanics are completely hidden.
Exactly. But what if that same human desire for precision, that hunger for an exact, visible, undeniable diagnosis, what if that could be applied to the timeline of human history itself?
Wow. Okay, that's a massive shift.
Right. So, okay, let's unpack this. What if someone told you that a man lying on his side in the dirt, like 2,500 years ago, contained the exact mathematical blueprint for the geopolitical borders of the modern Middle East?
I mean, it sounds like the premise of an esoteric thriller.
It really does.
But that framework is actually the core of our exploration today.
Hmm.
Because, well, our source material for this deep dive is a dense, highly detailed transcript from a very dedicated study group.
Mm-hmm.
And these individuals are dissecting the book of Ezekiel, specifically chapter 4.
Right, the really weird visual stuff.
Exactly. And they are attempting to map these ancient chronological timelines to massive, world-altering modern events.
Like really specific events, right?
Oh, incredibly specific. We are talking about calculating the exact founding of the nation of Israel in 1948.
Wow.
The Six-Day War in 1967. And they're even projecting this ancient math into the near future.
Right, specifically zeroing in on the years between like 2026 and 2036.
Yeah, that's their primary window.
It is just this mathematical and theological labyrinth.
Totally.
And our mission today is to walk you through how they arrive at these completely astonishing conclusions. We're going to look at the math, the history, and really the psychology behind these predictions.
But before we step into that labyrinth, we really need to establish a crucial point of clarification for you, the listener.
Yeah, this is important.
The sources we are unpacking today contain highly specific and sometimes very politically or culturally charged viewpoints.
Right.
This includes interpretations regarding the geopolitical status of Israel, the LGBTQ+ community, and, ongoing global conflicts.
Basically all the heavy hitter topics.
Exactly. And our goal in this deep dive is absolutely not to endorse or take sides on any of these issues.
We're not taking a stance here.
Right. Rather, we are just impartially reporting on how this specific study group interprets these events through their unique, highly numerical religious lens.
Yeah, we are simply here to explore the mechanics of their fascinating, complex worldview. We're essentially looking under the hood to see how the engine of this belief system actually runs.
Exactly.
And to do that, we have to travel back about 2,500 years to ancient Mesopotamia, to what is honestly one of the most bizarre pieces of street theater in recorded history.
It really is.
So let's set the physical scene, because the context is everything here. So Ezekiel is a prophet, right? But he's also a captive.
Right. He's a prisoner of war, basically.
Yeah. He is part of the Jewish exile community, and they're living near the Chebar Canal in Babylon. They've been violently ripped from their homeland. And God commands him to do something incredibly strange.
Very strange.
He's told to take a clay tablet, which was essentially the common writing paper of Mesopotamia, right?
Yeah. It's the ancient equivalent of just grabbing a legal pad off your desk.
Right. So he takes this tablet, and he has to draw a detailed blueprint of the city of Jerusalem on it.
So he is creating this miniature diorama of a city that is hundreds of miles away, a city that his fellow exiles are, desperately hoping they will return to soon.
And it's not a hopeful picture. It's a diorama of absolute doom.
Yeah.
He's told to build a miniature siege wall around this little clay city, put little battering rams against it, and then place a solid iron plate between himself and the model.
Like a literal wall of iron.
Exactly. Then Ezekiel is told to set his face against it with this hardened, hostile stare. And
No.
here's where it goes from just strange to completely excruciating.
Yeah, the physical toll here is wild.
He is commanded to lie down in the dirt, tied with ropes so he physically cannot move.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, tied down. And he has to lie on his left side for 390 days to represent the punishment of the northern kingdom of Israel.
Over a year, just on his left side.
Over a year. And then, when that agonizing year plus is finally done, he has to roll over and lie on his right side for 40 days. And that represents the southern kingdom of Judah.
The physical toll of this it cannot be overstated.
I mean, I couldn't stop thinking about this as an intense, grueling piece of modern performance art.
Right, right.
Imagine a David Blaine endurance stunt, like living in a glass box or standing on a pillar for days, but scaled up to over a year.
And in the ancient world, no less.
Exactly. Think about the bed sores, the muscle atrophy, the dehydration, not to mention the psychological weight of the stares from your neighbors who probably think you've just completely lost your mind.
Absolutely.
Why would anyone be commanded to subject themselves to this? What is the actual mechanism at play here?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the underlying mechanism is profoundly theological. And the study group focuses heavily on a specific phrase used in the biblical text.
Okay, what phrase?
Ezekiel is told he must bear the iniquity of the house of Israel and Judah.
Bear the iniquity.
Right. Now, to modern ears, bearing iniquity just sounds like I don't know, a poetic way of saying taking the punishment.
Yeah, just taking the fall.
But in ancient Hebrew culture, this is highly specialized, technical, priestly vocabulary.
And Ezekiel wasn't just a random guy off the street, right? He was from a priestly family before he was drafted as a prophet.
He was. Which means he intimately understands the mechanics of the ancient sacrificial system.
Okay.
If we look back at the book of Leviticus, which is essentially the operating manual for the ancient priesthood.
The rule book.
Exactly. Bearing iniquity is a recurring mechanical theme. If a person eats a peace offering on the third day instead of the first or second day, the text says they have profaned a holy thing and they bear their iniquity.
So they carry the liability for it.
They carry the physical and spiritual liability for that specific sin. If someone doesn't wash their clothes after touching something ritually unclean, they bear their guilt.
It operates almost like radiation, doesn't it?
That's a great way to put it.
Like, sin isn't just a bad thought. It's treated as this tangible, hazardous material that attaches to you and actually contaminates the community.
That analogy perfectly captures the ancient mindset. And in this priestly system, there had to be a way to safely handle and dispose of that hazardous material. Otherwise, it would just destroy the community entirely.
Right.
So, in Exodus 28, God commands that Aaron, the high priest, wear a specific gold plate on his forehead. And the text says he wears it so that he may bear the iniquity of the holy things.
So the high priest acts as a localized lightning rod.
Exactly. He absorbs the communal guilt so the people can remain in God's presence without being consumed by divine justice.
So Ezekiel, by lying immobilized on the ground in Babylon, is acting as a substitute. He's physically absorbing the radiation of an entire nation's accumulated crimes.
Yes.
He is the lightning rod for 430 years of rebellion.
And the study group connects this ancient priestly mechanic directly to the broader biblical narrative. They point out that Ezekiel's grueling substitution directly mirrors the famous suffering servant described in the book of Isaiah chapter 53.
Oh, right. The one who is stricken for the transgressions of my people.
Exactly. The one who bears their iniquities. For the study group, Ezekiel is a prototype. He is an archetype pointing directly toward the ultimate substitutionary act of Jesus Christ.
Whom they view as the final sin offering.
Right, the ultimate lightning rod absorbing the punishment for humanity's wrongdoings on the cross.
It really prompts you to consider the sheer devotion required to deliver a message like that. I mean, how far would a messenger actually have to go to wake a society up, to warn them that they are fundamentally disastrously off course?
Farther than most of us could ever imagine.
Ezekiel is screaming with his body because words have completely failed.
It is an act of profound desperation, but, and this is crucial, it is also an act of meticulous divine accounting.
Okay, the account.
Yeah, and it's the accounting aspect that becomes the central obsession of the study group. The specific numbers God gives Ezekiel, 390 days for Israel, 40 days for Judah. They are not arbitrary placeholders.
Right. They're not just rounding up to a year.
No, the group treats them as precise, load-bearing data points. But as soon as they try to run the numbers to figure out what they actually mean, They slam into a massive ancient textual mystery.
And the detective work here is just fascinating because it turns out the oldest surviving operating systems of the Bible don't even agree with each other on the baseline data.
They really don't.
The study group points out that the King James Version of the Bible, which is translated from the traditional Hebrew Masoretic text, clearly says what we just discussed. 390 days for the left side, 40 days for the right side.
Right. That's a total of 430 days.
But if you crack open the Septuagint, which is the ancient Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible created by Jewish scholars a few centuries before Christ, it says Ezekiel was commanded to lie on his left side for only 150 days.
Yeah, that's a huge difference.
150 plus 40 for Judah gives you a total of 190 days.
So we are looking at a discrepancy of 240 days, which entirely changes any historical or predictive math you try to build on top of it.
I have to admit, when I read this in the sources, my immediate reaction was deep skepticism.
Sure.
I mean, if this is supposed to be the exact divine math of the universe, the literal blueprint of history, why are the two oldest versions of the text giving us completely different numbers?
It's a very fair question.
How can we trust a timeline if we can't even agree on the starting code? Are we supposed to just pick the one we like better and discard the other?
Well, the study group wrestles with this discrepancy extensively. And the answer, or at least the context for the debate, lies in the actual history of the ancient Near East.
Okay, walk me through it.
We have to look at the lifespan of the northern kingdom of Israel. After King Solomon died around 931 BC, there was a massive civil war that split the United Nation into two distinct factions.
Right, the North and the South.
Yes.
Yep.
The 10 northern tribes formed Israel, and the 2 southern tribes formed Judah. Now, the northern kingdom of Israel only existed as an independent political entity for about 210 years.
210 years, okay.
Right, before the Assyrian Empire swept in, conquered them, and deported them in 722 BC.
Okay, let me track this. The Northern Kingdom only existed for 210 years, but the Hebrew text says Ezekiel was punishing them for 390 years of sin.
Exactly.
That math doesn't work. You
Yeah.
can't have 390 years of continuous rebellion in a nation that only existed for 210 years.
And that exact logical problem is why supporters of the Septuagint, let's call it Path A, argue that the Greek text is the original uncorrupted file. They argue that 150 years of intense, specific idolatry fits perfectly within that 210-year historical window of the Northern Kingdom's existence.
That makes logical sense.
Furthermore, some of these scholars suspect that the Hebrew Masoretic text was intentionally modified by scribes much later, perhaps in the 2nd century AD.
Wait, really? Intentionally modified?
That's the theory. They theorized that early Christians were using the 150-day timeline to prove messianic fulfillment. So the rabbinic scribes allegedly altered the number to 390 to break the Christians' math.
Wow. That is a wild accusation of historical tampering.
It's a heavy claim.
So the Greek text might be the pristine original, and then 150 is the true number. What is the counter-argument? How do defenders of the Hebrew Masoretic text justify the 390 days?
The defenders of the Masoretic text, so Path B, argue the exact opposite scenario.
Of course they do.
They hypothesize that the Hellenistic scribes translating the text into Greek were the ones who tampered with it. They suggest the Greek scribes looked at the original 390, realized it didn't fit the 210-year lifespan of the Northern Kingdom, and artificially altered it down to 150 to make the math look cleaner to a Greek audience.
To harmonize it.
Exactly. They argue the scribes tried to harmonize Ezekiel's numbers, forcing the math to reflect their limited understanding of the history rather than preserving the complex original divine number.
So we essentially have two competing historical algorithms, like Mac OS versus Windows 11.
Right.
And both sides are accusing the other's developers of planting bugs in the code.
That's a perfect analogy.
How does the study group resolve this? Did they pick a side?
The most compelling part of their discussion is that they refuse to throw one out to validate the other.
Really? They keep both?
Yes. In their view, God's sovereignty over the preservation of the text means both versions act as highly valuable source codes.
Oh, interesting.
They suggest that a divine author, existing outside of time, might actually be using both the Septuagint and the Masoretic numbers as valid, multi-layered prophetic puzzles.
Like dual fulfillments.
Exactly. There might be a historical fulfillment hidden in the 190-day timeline and a completely different equally valid, longer-term fulfillment hidden in the 430-day timeline.
It's like finding a hidden track on a vinyl record that only plays if you spin it backward. But the forward track is also a masterpiece.
Yeah.
It requires an incredibly high view of the text's complexity. And while the Greek text offers one neat way to view a specific window of history, it's what classical Jewish scholars did with the Hebrew text, that problematic 390-day number that completely blew my mind.
It is brilliant.
Because instead of trying to squeeze 390 years of sin into a kingdom that only existed for 210 years, they didn't look at a single contiguous block of time.
Right.
They built a timeline looking backward through centuries.
This brings us to the traditional Jewish mathematical approach. And the study group draws this heavily from the Seder Olam Rabbah.
Okay, what is the Seder Olam Rabbah?
For context, it is a foundational 2nd century Hebrew language chronology that details the dates of biblical events, from creation to Alexander the Great's conquest of Persia.
Okay, so it's a massive historical timeline.
It is essentially the basis for the traditional Jewish calendar used today. The group pairs this with the commentary of Rashi.
The famous rabbi.
Right, the brilliant 11th century French rabbi.
Yeah.
Rashi and the authors of the Seder Olam realized that the 390 years of iniquity couldn't possibly refer to just the Northern Kingdom's brief existence.
Right, the math doesn't fit.
It had to encompass the cumulative, discontinuous periods where the Israelites actively rebelled against God, stretching all the way back to their initial entry into the Promised Land.
They didn't look for one long era of sin. They looked for all the separate, jagged pieces of rebellion and stitched them together. The study group breaks down Rashi's exact math, and the level of forensic historical accounting is just staggering. Walk us through how they arrive at 390.
Well, they start in the book of Judges. This era is famous for a vicious, repetitive cycle.
Yeah.
The Israelites rebel. God allows a foreign king to oppress them. The people cry out. God sends a judge to rescue them. And then they eventually rebel again.
Wash, rinse, repeat.
Exactly. So Rashi calculates the exact years the Israelites were physically subjugated by foreign powers as direct punishment for these rebellions.
Okay, let's do the math.
He logs 8 years under a Mesopotamian king named Cushan-Rishathaim,
Okay, 8
then 18 years under the Moabite king Eglon,
plus 18 is 26.
20 years under the Canaanite commander Sisera,
That's 46.
7 years under the Midianites,
53.
18 years under the Ammonites,
Okay, 71.
and finally 40 years of oppression under the Philistines.
Okay, let me add that last bit up. 71 plus 40, that equals exactly 111 years of subjugation during the era of the Judges.
Exactly. That 111 years is the first major block of our timeline.
Got it.
Next, Rashi moves forward in history to the period of the divided monarchy. He starts the clock at the exact moment King Jeroboam instituted idolatrous calf worship in the northern kingdom.
Which basically cut them off from the temple in Jerusalem, right?
Right. And he runs that clock all the way until the final northern king, Hoshea, is conquered and exiled by the Assyrians. That period of continuous, institutionalized rebellion lasted exactly 243 years.
Okay, carrying the math forward. We have 111 years from the Judges, plus 243 years of the corrupted monarchy. That gives us 354 years.
Correct.
But Ezekiel was lying on his side for 390 days. We are still 36 years short of the total debt. Did they just round up, or did they find the missing 36 years?
Rabbinic scholars don't round up when it comes to divine justice.
Fair point.
To find the missing 36 years, they look back even further in history, to the time before the Israelites even entered the land. They look to the wandering in the wilderness.
Wait, hold on. That doesn't make sense.
Why not?
Everyone knows the story of the Exodus. It was famously 40 years of wandering in the desert as punishment for not trusting God to enter Canaan. Where are they getting 36 from?
That nuance is a perfect example of how rigorous this ancient accounting is.
Okay.
They absolutely agree the total time spent in the wilderness was 40 years. However, they argue that the punishment phase was not the entire 40 years.
Oh, really?
The first 2 years, journeying from Egypt to Kadesh Barnea, were a period of hope, covenant-making at Sinai, and transition. The ultimate rebellion of the spies hadn't happened yet.
Okay, so you subtract the first 2 years.
Yes. Furthermore, the final 2 years were a period of transition and military conquest leading into the Promised Land. Therefore, the rabbis exclude those 4 transitional bookend years. They argue that the purely punitive, strictly defined period of punishment in the wilderness the years they were actively serving a sentence, was exactly 36 years.
The precision is just staggering. So you take the 111 years of the judges' suppression, you add the 243 years of the corrupted northern monarchy, and you add the 36 years of purely punitive wilderness wandering. 111 plus 243 plus 36, it equals exactly 390 years.
It creates a perfectly enclosed, elegant historical equation.
Regardless of whether you accept the rabbinic adjustments to the wilderness years, you have to stand back and admire this worldview.
It's beautiful in its own way.
It is. This is a universe where divine justice isn't just a vague, sweeping concept of karma. It is an airtight accounting ledger. It's the belief that every single action, every year of rebellion, and every year of punishment is logged by an auditor. And the scales of history are balanced down to the exact digit.
It reveals a profound, anchoring belief in an orderly, attentive creator who does not lose track of time.
Yeah.
But the study group we are analyzing doesn't stop with ancient rabbinic history.
Okay.
They transition into the modern era by taking this ancient, backward-looking math and flipping the axis entirely.
Okay, how?
They ask a thrilling question. What if these numbers aren't just an audit of the past? What if they're actually a predictive algorithm for the future?
If Ezekiel's pantomime was a map, does it point to us?
Yes.
This brings us to what the sources refer to as the Chuck Missler model. And we really need to pause and explain who Chuck Missler was, because his fingerprints are all over this specific brand of modern prophetic interpretation.
He's a very unique figure in this space.
Missler wasn't a traditional theologian. He was a Naval Academy graduate, a branch chief at the Department of Defense, and a corporate executive at several major tech and engineering firms.
Not your typical biblical scholar profile.
Not at all. Later in life, he turned his focus to biblical teaching, and he brought this intense systems engineering mindset to the Bible. He didn't read it just as a collection of moral stories. He viewed the biblical text as an integrated message design.
He treated prophecies like mathematical code waiting to be deciphered.
Exactly. Missler's engineering background is vital to understanding the methodology here. He didn't tolerate loose variables, and before his model can run Ezekiel's ancient street theater through a modern algorithm, he established two strict, non-negotiable rules that must be applied to the math.
Right, so rule 1 is the prophetic calendar assumption.
Okay.
The study group insists that whenever the Bible deals with prophetic timelines, it never, ever uses our modern solar calendar of 365.2422 days.
Okay, that's specific.
They argue that applying our modern calendar to ancient prophecy breaks the code. Instead, they exclusively use a 360-day calendar year.
My immediate reaction when I saw that was, why? Why 360? Are they just trying to make the math easier for themselves?
It seems like that, but the justification for the 360-day calendar is actually quite layered. They draw evidence from multiple biblical texts to support this as the original divine standard.
Give me an example.
Well, in the story of Noah's flood in the book of Genesis, the text specifically states the floodwaters prevailed for 150 days.
Okay.
A few verses later, it equates that exact 150-day period to precisely 5 months. If 5 months equals 150 days, then a month is exactly 30 days, and a year is exactly 360 days.
That's pretty clean math.
They also point to the New Testament book of Revelation, where apocalyptic periods are described interchangeably. They use phrases like 42 months, 1,260 days, and time, times, and half a time, which means 3.5 years.
And those all have to equal the same thing.
Right. Those phrases only mathematically align with each other if you use a strict 360-day year.
They even bring classical geometry into it, right? The idea that a circle has 360 degrees.
Yes, exactly. Some proponents of this theory suggest that the original pre-flood Earth orbit might have been a perfect 360-day cycle, reflecting divine perfection.
And then something changed it.
Yeah. They propose that a catastrophic event later altered the Earth's orbit to our current, slightly elliptical 365.24-day reality. But whether you accept the astrophysics of that or not, the rule stands. Prophetic math requires a 360-day year.
Okay, so rule 1 is locked in. We must use a 360-day year. Now, let's explore rule 2, which is the Leviticus multiplier.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Because this is where the math gets exponential. Let's look at Ezekiel's total punishment days again. 390 for Israel on his left side, 40 for Judah on his right side.
That's a combined total of 430 years of judgment against the entire nation.
Right. The study group notes that historically the Jewish people were exiled to Babylon for exactly 70 years.
Yes.
So they take the 430 total years of debt, subtract the 70 years they already paid in Babylonian captivity, and they're left with a deficit of 360 years.
Exactly.
But why does the algorithm change here? Why not just say they owe another 360 years and run the clock?
Because history tells us that after the 70-year Babylonian exile ended, the people's response was deeply fractured.
How so?
Well, a small remnant of Judah returned to Jerusalem, but they were still a vassal state. They weren't free. And the vast majority of the northern tribes never returned at all. They were just scattered into history.
So the nation didn't really get put back together?
No, the nation as a whole did not achieve full spiritual repentance or national sovereignty, and this lack of repentance triggers a highly specific legal clause found in the book of Leviticus, chapter 26.
Oh, the covenantal discipline chapter.
Exactly. In Leviticus 26, God lays out the terms of the national covenant. It operates almost exactly like an ancient Near Eastern treaty.
Okay.
God warns the Israelites 4 separate escalating times that if they are punished with exile and plague, and they still refuse to repent and obey, the discipline will increase exponentially.
So it's a compounding penalty?
Yes. He specifically states, I will punish you 7 times more for your sins.
A 7x multiplier.
Right.
It's not just additional punishment. It is an escalation of the treaty's curse for breach of contract.
And the study group applies this legal clause directly to Ezekiel's remaining debt.
Okay, let's run the numbers.
You take the remaining deficit of 360 years, and you apply the Leviticus multiplier of 7.
360 multiplied by 7.
Equals exactly 2,520 prophetic years.
2,520. Let that number hang in the air for a second.
It's a big number.
Because for the study group, that number becomes the master key to unlocking modern history. It is the exact duration of the great global prophetic exile. And when they take that master key and apply it to specific historical starting lines, the destinations they arrive at are what they consider jaw-dropping, irrefutable modern fulfillments.
Let's examine how they run the simulation. We'll look at target 1, which is the nation of Israel itself. If you have a master key of 2,520 prophetic years, you first have to convert that back into our actual modern solar years to find out when it happens on our calendar.
Let me do the mental arithmetic here to make sure I'm tracking the code.
Go for it.
You have 2,520 years, but each year is only 360 days long. So 2,520 multiplied by 360 gives you 907,200 total days of exile.
Exactly.
To find out how many of our modern solar years that is, you divide 907,200 by 365.2422.
And the result?
The result is roughly 2,483.8 solar years.
Right. And the group breaks that decimal down further, converting it to exactly 2,483 solar years, 9 months, and 21 days.
Okay, so you have the exact duration in modern time. Now you need the starting gun.
Historically, the 70-year Babylonian exile ended when Cyrus the Great of Persia conquered Babylon and issued a decree allowing the Jewish exiles to officially return to their land.
Right.
Historically, this occurred in the spring of 537 BC.
Okay, so if you start the clock at the spring of 537 BC and you add exactly 2,483 solar years and roughly 9 months,
you land precisely in May of 1948.
May 1948 is the exact month and year the modern state of Israel was officially founded.
The mathematical alignment is staggering.
It really is.
Think about the scope of that timeline. It stretches across 2.5 millennia. It survives the rise and fall of the Persian Empire, the Greeks, the Romans, the Byzantines, the Ottomans, and the British Empire.
All of them.
And the math lands exactly on the month the United Nations mandate ended, and David Ben-Gurion read the Declaration of Independence in Tel Aviv, establishing the State of Israel.
Wow.
For the study group, this is not a coincidence.
Yeah.
It is incontrovertible proof that Ezekiel's vision wasn't just ancient pantomime, it was a divine, mathematically perfect chronometer ticking down to the 20th century.
But the algorithm has more layers, because what if you pick a different historical starting point? The group moves to target 2, which is the city of Jerusalem. They note that while the exiles were given permission to return in 537 BC, the actual physical rebuilding of the defensive walls of Jerusalem, the act that restored it as a functioning fortified city, wasn't completed until much later.
Yeah, after intense political opposition.
Historically, the completion of those walls is marked around August of 518 BC.
So they apply the exact same mathematical master key. They take the new starting point of August 518 BC, and they add the exact same punishment duration.
2,483 solar years and 9 months.
Exactly. The math shifts the destination forward in time. Where does it land?
It lands squarely in 1967, the exact year of the Six-Day War.
Unbelievable.
The war where Israeli forces captured the Old City and the Temple Mount, bringing the entirety of Jerusalem under Jewish control for the first time in millennia.
The study group views 1948 as the fulfillment of the nation returning, which addresses the combined national debt, right?
Yeah.
And 1967 as the fulfillment of the restoration of the capital city itself.
It provides a cohesive, dual fulfillment.
It does. But what's fascinating is that they provide an alternative calculation that arrives at the exact same 1967 destination using a completely different set of numbers.
Wait, really? How?
This goes back to the Masoretic text number we discussed earlier, the 390 days isolated just for the northern kingdom.
Okay, path B.
Right. If you separate Judah's debt and just look at the northern kingdom of Israel, they owed 390 years.
Right.
The group takes that isolated 390 years and applies the Leviticus 7x multiplier directly to it.
Oh, okay. Let's do that math. 390 multiplied by 7 gives you 2,730 prophetic years.
Exactly. Converted to a modern solar calendar, 2,730 prophetic years is roughly 2,690 solar years.
Okay.
Historically, the northern kingdom's final doomed rebellion under King Hoshea against the Assyrians, the rebellion that sealed their fate, began in 725 BC.
So if you start the clock at Hoshea's rebellion in 725 BC and add the 2,690 solar years of punishment, you land once again squarely on 1967.
Yes. You have two completely different starting points, separated by 2 centuries. You have 2 different mathematical paths based on different variables within the same Ezekiel text.
And yet both equations converge on the exact same year.
The sheer mathematical elegance of it is what captivates the study group.
I can see why.
And there is one more calculation they discuss regarding this timeline, which focuses not on the dramatic end of the timeline, but on its absolute quiet center.
The midpoint anomaly. This was the detail that made me actually pause and reread the transcript.
It's a great detail.
The study group looks at the vast, yawning stretch of time between the initial return of the exiles in 537 BC and the eventual founding of the nation in 1948 AD. They ask a simple question. What happens if you chop that 2,520-year prophetic timeline exactly in half? What sits at the dead center of the algorithm?
If you calculate the exact midpoint between 537 BC and 1948 AD, you arrive at the late 7th century, specifically right around the year 691 AD.
And 691 AD is a massive date in geopolitical and religious history. That is the exact time period when the Umayyad Caliphate completed the construction of the Dome of the Rock on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem.
Sitting directly on the site where the Jewish temples once stood.
Exactly.
For the study group, this architectural event is highly significant prophetically. They interpret the book of Daniel's ancient prophecy regarding the abomination of desolation, which is an event that stops the daily sacrifice and occupies the holy site, as being perfectly fulfilled by the construction of this specific structure.
So finding the Dome of the Rock at the exact mathematical midpoint of the Ezekiel exile timeline
Heavily reinforces their belief that world history is operating on a highly structured, predetermined grid. It is perfectly symmetrical.
I mean, regardless of your personal religious beliefs, regardless of whether you view this as divine revelation or incredibly elaborate retrospective pattern matching, you have to appreciate the profound mathematical symmetry of this model.
It's beautiful.
It is like watching a mathematician write a massive, complex equation on a chalkboard that wraps around the entire room. It's full of obscure symbols and ancient fractions. And when they finally write the equal sign at the very end, it perfectly describes the orbit of a distant planet.
That's a great image.
It feels like discovering a hidden source code running beneath the terrifying chaos of human history.
It speaks to the deeply human desire to find order in chaos. To believe that the rise and fall of nations, the wars, the exiles, the treaties, it isn't just random geopolitical friction. It is the unfolding of a meticulous authored plan.
Yeah.
But as with any algorithm that successfully maps the past, the inevitable next step for the study group is to input today's date into the machine.
Because if this ancient code accurately pointed to the geopolitical earthquakes of 1948 and 1967, the most pressing, urgent question for these individuals is, what does the algorithm predict for us right now? Are we in the end game? How much time is left on the clock?
Right. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the study group believes that 1948 and 1967 act as the starting guns for the final terminal countdown.
Okay, so how do they measure the final countdown?
To determine how long that final countdown is, they turn to the biblical definition of a generation, referencing Psalm 90, which states the days of our lives are 70 years, or 80 if we have strength.
So they establish a maximum generational lifespan of 80 years.
Correct. Furthermore, they link this to a statement Jesus made in the Gospels. He stated that the generation that sees the fig tree blossom, which is a metaphor they interpret as the national rebirth of Israel, will not pass away before all end-time events are fulfilled.
So the math is actually pretty straightforward. You take the rebirth of Israel on May 14th, 1948, and you add an 80-year generation to see when the window closes.
But because they are rigidly committed to consistency, they insist on using the 360-day prophetic calendar for those 80 years as well.
Okay, wait, so they don't just add 80 regular years to 1948 to get 2028.
No, that consistency is crucial because it changes the date. 80 prophetic years of 360 days translates to roughly 78.85 of our actual solar years.
Oh, wow. Okay, so if you add 78.85 solar years to May 14th, 1948, the countdown doesn't end in 2028. It lands squarely in 2026 or 2027.
Exactly. In fact, one member of the study group calculates the exact days and lands on March 21st, 2027.
March 21.
And when they cross-reference that specific date with the Hebrew calendar, it perfectly aligns with the Jewish festival of Purim.
And Purim is symbolically massive for their theology.
Huge.
Purim celebrates the story of Esther, right? The miraculous deliverance of the Jewish people from an existential threat of annihilation orchestrated by an enemy empire.
Right. To have the 80-year timeline end on that specific festival resonates deeply with their end times expectation of a final global conflict and ultimate deliverance.
But the calculation gets even tighter. During the discussion, they introduce a fascinating historical wrinkle that I had actually never considered.
Yeah, this part is amazing.
One member brings up a specific ship, the Exodus 1947. I remember reading about this in the sources and be completely absorbed by it. This isn't just a footnote. It's a massive geopolitical flashpoint.
The story of that ship is one of the most poignant pieces of post-World War II history, and it directly catalyzed the creation of the state.
It's incredible. So the Exodus 1947 was a dilapidated ship carrying 4,515 Jewish Holocaust survivors.
So many people.
They were fleeing displaced persons camps in Europe, attempting to reach British-controlled Palestine. The ship left France on July 11, 1947. The British Royal Navy intercepted it, rammed it, boarded it forcefully, and ultimately deported the refugees back to Europe in caged prison ships.
Awful.
The international outrage generated by the single event was overwhelming. It directly forced the United Nations to pass the resolution to partition Palestine and create the State of Israel just a few months later. On November 29, 1947, the ship literally launched the nation into existence.
So the study group looks at that history and asks a critical variable question. What if the 80-year clock didn't start on the day Israel officially declared independence in May 1948?
But on the day the UN actually passed the resolution in November 1947, catalyzed by that ship.
Exactly. If you run that variable, adding the 80 prophetic years to November 29, 1947, the timeline shrinks. The clock runs out faster.
It lands exactly on October 4, 2026.
Yep.
And what is October 4, 2026 on the Hebrew calendar? It is the holiday of Simchat Torah.
And Simchat Torah is the holiday celebrating the joyful conclusion of the annual cycle of reading the Torah and the immediate, seamless beginning of the new cycle.
The symbolism of an old era concluding and a new divine cycle beginning is, again, entirely cohesive with their worldview of a coming millennial kingdom.
It really is. However,
Yeah.
they also acknowledge that there are other variables at play. What if the starting line for the generation isn't the rebirth of the nation in 1948, but the recapture of the Holy City in 1967?
Right, target 2. If you change the starting block to 1967 and you add 70 or 80 years, suddenly the timeline stretches out to 2036 or 2037.
Exactly.
And there is a very real, palpable, psychological tension in the transcript here. You can hear it in their voices as they discuss the math. They discuss this later 2036 date with a bit of hesitation.
There's profound human desire to not push the dates too far away.
Right. They are balancing this intense, burning sense of prophetic urgency with the stark, sobering realization that they might just have to wait a little longer.
Yeah.
They might be an older generation by the time this culminates, or they might pass away before seeing it.
They also introduce a celestial variable into the mix to sort of bridge the gap. They note that the asteroid Apophis is slated by astronomers to make an extremely close, visible flyby of Earth in the year 2029.
Wait, literally 2029?
Yes, precisely around the time of Passover. In their framework, they speculate whether this near miss or the gravitational effects of it could align with the cataclysmic sixth seal events described in the book of Revelation, which involve cosmic disturbances and meteors.
Wow.
So 2029 also becomes a massive looming waymark on their dashboard.
So their dashboard has red flashing lights at 2026, 2027, 2029, and 2036. And this intense granular focus on these highly specific, imminent timelines leads directly into how this group views the daily news.
Absolutely.
Because when you believe the historical algorithm is about to execute its final line of code, you don't just casually read the morning newspaper. You're scanning it for prophetic triggers. Every headline is a potential starting gun.
The group perceives the current global geopolitical landscape in a very specific, almost suspended way. They describe the world as currently being on a global pause button.
Oh, pause button.
Yeah. They view the intense boiling tensions in the Middle East, specifically the proxy wars, the disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz, the severe friction between the U.S. and Iran, and even what they perceive as the artificial inflation of the global stock market as a temporary, unnatural holding pattern.
Like it's being held back on purpose.
Right. It is the calm before the storm. A fragile equilibrium that could be unpaused at any second by a single divine keystroke.
They aren't just looking at military movements or economic indicators, though. They are looking at the Earth itself. They cite strange, unprecedented environmental phenomena as evidence that the physical world is groaning, shifting into this final phase.
Very true.
They specifically highlight a unique, massive glacier burst in the village of Blatten, Switzerland, noting that scientists said no model had ever predicted it occurring that way. They point to an uptick in unusual underwater volcanoes. For them, the Earth's crust is physically reacting to the approaching timeline.
But perhaps the most urgent and culturally specific sign they discuss revolves around a planned event in the Middle East. And again, as we note this, we are objectively reporting the study group's theological viewpoint to understand their mechanics.
Right.
The group focuses intensely on an LGBTQ+ Pride Festival scheduled for early June, to be held in the region of the Dead Sea.
And geographically and historically, the Dead Sea region is completely synonymous in biblical literature with the ancient cities of Sodom and Gomorrah.
Exactly. Viewing this upcoming event through their highly specific, literalist textual lens, the group sees this not as a cultural festival or a human rights gathering, but as an act of profound, deliberate spiritual defiance.
Okay.
They reference the prophet Isaiah, chapter 2, which states, "The day of the Lord will come against everyone who is proud and lofty to bring them low." Because this event is taking place in the exact geographical location associated with ancient divine judgment, they view it as a massive, urgent prophetic trigger, a direct affront to their understanding of biblical law that they believe will hasten the end-time events.
They see it as a dare to the divine.
They do.
It is a worldview where every headline, every cultural shift, every melting glacier, and every ancient fraction is woven into a singular, undeniable tapestry of an approaching conclusion. But what I found genuinely compelling about this group wasn't just their stark conclusions, it was their internal methodology.
Their process is fascinating.
Despite the intensity of their beliefs and the urgency of their timelines, they constantly remind each other of a concept they call the Berean mindset.
The Berean mindset is drawn directly from the book of Acts, chapter 17, verse 11. The Bereans were a specific group of people in a Greek city who were highly praised by the Apostle Paul.
Why were they praised?
Because the text says they were noble and fair-minded. When they were presented with radical new theological information in that case, the message of early Christianity, they didn't just blindly, gullibly accept it.
Right.
Nor did they violently, cynically reject it out of hand. The text says they received the word with all readiness of mind, but they searched the scriptures daily to find out whether these things were so.
The study group actively encourages this rigorous cross-examination within their own ranks. If a member presents a timeline that points definitively to 2026, the others don't just applaud, they say, check the math. Could the underlying calendar assumption be wrong? Did you carry the decimal correctly? Are we forcing a square peg into a round hole?
Yeah.
They are fiercely dedicated to their worldview, but they also advocate for a vital intellectual agility within that worldview.
It raises a profound question for all of us, honestly, regardless of our religious or philosophical backgrounds.
What's the question?
How do you, the listener, consume the flood of information you encounter daily? In an era defined by algorithmic echo chambers and intense confirmation bias, are you rigid in your beliefs, demanding that all new data conform to your pre-existing assumptions? Or are you a Gorian?
Are you checking the work?
Right. Are you willing to constantly adapt, recalculate, and rigorously test your own baseline assumptions when new data, new historical context, or even new mathematical models present themselves?
It's a necessary challenge for anyone trying to navigate complex information today. Let's zoom out and summarize this incredible journey we've been on. We started with Ezekiel, a captive priest lying in the Mesopotamian dirt, performing agonizing street theater to warn his people about the weight of their actions. We watched 11th century rabbis use precise historical accounting to calculate the exact years of ancient rebellion in the era of the judges. We explored how converting 360-day prophetic calendars and Levitical 7x multipliers resulted in dates that perfectly align with the founding of modern Israel in 1948 and the capture of Jerusalem in 1967.
The math is just staggering.
And finally, we saw how this ancient mathematically derived algorithm is being used today to process modern geopolitical anxieties, pointing to potential imminent culminations in 2026, 2027, or beyond.
It is a remarkable synthesis of ancient text, celestial calendars, and modern historical events. And what it ultimately reflects is the deep, abiding human need for order.
Yeah.
Whether we are theoretical physicists searching for the elusive theory of everything in quantum mechanics, historians tracking the cyclical rise and fall of empires, or theologians calculating prophetic timelines, we are all searching for the same underlying comfort.
What's that?
We are searching for a framework to prove that the terrifying chaos of the world, the wars, the disasters, the profound uncertainty of tomorrow, is not random. We want to believe it is actually moving according to a grand, designed algorithm. We all want to know that someone, somewhere, holds the master blueprint.
So, what does this all mean? The sources we analyzed ended with a fascinating, almost mythological thought that I want to unpack.
The King Arthur analogy.
Yes, one of the study group members referenced the legendary story of King Arthur, the ancient idea that whoever can draw the sword from the stone is the true king, the one with the right to rule. But they viewed it through a biblical lens.
Right, the symbol shift.
The sword represents the word, or truth, and the stone represents Christ, or the foundational bedrock of reality. They suggest that true mastery, true ruling and understanding only comes when you put in the grueling effort to draw the sword from the stone.
It's a powerful image.
And that is the thought I want to leave you with today. True understanding, true mastery over the chaos of your own life and the incredibly complex world around you isn't just handed to you on a silver platter. It isn't found in a quick headline or a superficial summary.
No, it never is.
It only comes when you are willing to do the hard, painstaking work of extracting truth the sword from the dense, unyielding rock of complex information. It takes effort, it takes the Berean mindset, and it requires you to test the structural integrity of what you believe every single day. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring, stay curious, and no matter what algorithm you use to make sense of the world, always check the math.